Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks very much indeed, Ross, for setting this up. I'm David Brown, and it's a great pleasure for me to be giving my first lecture my first Bannockburn House afternoon lecture. My background is very much in transport. In 2019, I retired, having served 27 years as a public transport officer with the former Central Regional Council and then Stirling Council. And before that, I worked in the bus industry. So I have a particular interest in transport history. And I should say that I also have a degree in history from the University of Stirling. So with that little bit of background, we'll just get straight into it. Share. And everyone should then see this on the screen. Coaching against the railway, stagecoaches, trains, and the Stirling Observer. Now, the title Coaching Against the Railway comes from a series of opinion pieces that were run in the Stirling Observer during the year 1850. And together they show an interesting reaction to the coming of the Scottish Central Railway, which was Stirling's first railway. But before we look at that, let's just see some advertisements from the 1830s, the decade before the railways came. The Stirling Observer was established in September 1836, so this is right from the beginning of the Stirling Observer, and you'll see at this time there was quite a lively stagecoach scene in Stirling. We had the Forth and Clyde canal coaches operating between Stirling and Glasgow, making connections with the canal. We had mains coaches operating between Stirling and Glasgow, performing the journey in 3 hours and a quarter. A couple of journeys per day, and we had the Highland Chieftain coach running out to Callander from Callander on the Trossachs from Stirling, 4 shillings and 6pence inside, 3 shillings outside, which was a reasonable amount at that time. 1837, we can see quite a bit of detail really about the Forth and Clyde Canal service, where you would take the stagecoach to the lot, a cabin of boat and inside of coach 5 shillings and 6pence, or steerage on boat and outside of coach 4 shillings, with no gratuity payable to coach drivers. There we go. We had a coach, Edinburgh and Stirling mail coach with reduced fares in 1838. And the British Queen, splendid new coaches between Stirling and Glasgow at greatly reduced fares, only 5 shillings inside and 3 shillings outside. An omnibus running between Stirling, Bridge of Allen and Dunblane, and mains coaches to Glasgow, once again now running 3 times a day. And these are all adverts from the late 1830s. But on the 1st of March 1848 comes the Scottish Central Railway, opening from Stirling to Castlecarey. At Castlecarey, the Scottish Central connected with the Edinburgh and Glasgow Railway, allowing you to make a journey into, well, Glasgow or Edinburgh. And on the 22nd of May of the same year, the railway was extended to Perth. And by 1850, it formed part of a continuous line of railways running from London to Aberdeen. But obviously, a red letter day in the history of Stirling, the arrival of the Scottish Central. This shows the extent of the Scottish Central Railway when it opened in 1848, running from Greenhill to Perth. There is actually a little mistake on this. I've made this map up myself, and I've included Crieff Junction, which didn't actually open until 1856. But this shows the stations along the line and the line as it stood at that time. Now, it's important to note that the Scottish Central Railway was very much a Perth-centred organisation. Most of the board of directors were large, wealthy Perthshire landowners, or else they were people who had a background in railway promotion. The Stirling area was really only represented by William Murray of Palmaise and John Stirling of Kippenross. Apart from that, it was very Perthshire orientated. The prospectus had stressed the connections that the railway would make between Perth, Glasgow, Edinburgh and London, and had also made mention of the convenience of being able to obtain Bannockburn coal in Perth. So it was rather Perth orientated. But the coaches fought back. They didn't just meekly lie over or else start just producing feeder services into the railway. They did put up a determined fight back against the railway, in which they had the greatest possible support from the Stirling Observer. Coaching against the railway. This is a selection of some of the articles running throughout 1850. And what I'm going to do here is pick out some of the salient points, particularly the language in which this is expressed. January 1850. They, referring to the directors of the Scottish Central Railway, have purposely alienated the public, in for so long a period having heard and treated all their complaints with the greatest indifference. Still January 1850. We can attribute it to nothing but the high degree of unpopularity into which the railway has fallen in consequence of the worst possible management. February 1850. The slightest attempt to conciliate the public has never been seriously made by the directors of the railway. May 1850. We give it as our individual opinion, and we well know that it is the opinion of the whole community in this district, both town and country, that the railway managers have purposely and uniformly treated the public here with contempt. Also in May 1850, James Grant's omnibus started up. Now, James Grant was a native of Blairgowrie, who later moved to Glasgow, where he started up a coach business. But he gave up the business in 1850 and went on visits to Bridge of Allan for the sake of his health. His health was failing a bit. And when he was in Bridge of Allan, he felt there was this great opportunity for starting up an omnibus service, linking it with Stirling. He set himself up, he had an office in Dumbarton Road. The 1851 census shows him living in Dumbarton Road with his wife and two daughters and son. He loses no time in getting this business going. And he has this great cheerleader in the Stirling Observer, which on the 13th of June ran the article you can see on the right-hand side, which extols the virtues of Grant's omnibus against the purgatorial journey, or as it says in the article itself, passengers undergoing the purgatorial limbo peculiar to railway stations in this terrible journey by train between Stirling and Bridge of Allan, compared with the great convenience of James Grant's omnibus, which is, as it says, on occasions burdened with a load of 40 adults besides children. September 1850. A new coach then started up. This is 2 years after the railway has arrived. A new stagecoach service is starting up between Stirling and Glasgow. And the Stirling Observer comments, it is therefore not unlikely that, referring to the newly introduced Stirling Glasgow coach, the coach may succeed, as we hope it will, for the purpose of teaching the railway people that there are other modes of travelling besides those they supply. Later in September 1850, the public at large, very much to the benefit of agriculture, would find a way of reducing haughty railway directors to reason, which is very much wanted. October 1850. The hearty opposition against the Scottish Central Railway continues with unabated vigour, and as time rolls on, it increases in intensity, the result of nothing else than bad management. October 1850. The railway has already become only a matter of secondary importance for passenger traffic, which people use when they cannot get the coaches to suit. October 1850. James Grant advertising in the Stirling Observer. James Grant and the public against the Scottish Central Railway. The Scottish Central Railway, with the intention of depriving the public of James Grant's omnibuses, have intimated their intention of running trains between Stirling and Bridge of Allen and Stirling and Bannockburn at rates which won't pay for grease to their wheels. James Grant starts at the hour advertised. The public do not require to wait for trains at his station, and anyone who considers his rates high will, till further notice, be carried for nothing. By order of the public, James Grant. Later, December 1850. James Grant's omnibuses on the Scottish Central Railway. James Grant still accommodates the public with his matchless omnibuses, in spite of the ruinous opposition on the part of the Scottish Central Railway. James Grant defies all opposition by the continued order of the public. James Grant. Now, there's a certain amount of marketing hype in this. The Scottish Central really aren't all that interested, surely, in trying to run James Grant off the road between Stirling and Bridge of Allen. They're much more intent on providing a link in the chain of railways between London and Aberdeen, and accommodating a much more valuable traffic than a few passengers going one stop on the railway. But James Grant's taking this approach because clearly he feels that this will appeal to the public, will appeal to his passengers. And the comments of the Stirling Observer would indicate that the Stirling Observer also feel that by taking digs at the Scottish Central Railway, they are echoing a sentiment that will be held by ordinary members of the public, and certain members of the public in particular, which we will come to later on. However, other coach operators were working much more in cooperation with the railway. And here we have Alexander Campbell of the Royal Hotel in Stirling, advertising his coaches running from his hotel to Callander, Trosachs and Loch Katrine. And he explains in his advert all the fantastic journeys that you can make to Glasgow, Tarbert, Inversnaid, etc. with the steamer connections. And also he makes very clear in his advert that the Royal Sovereign coaches will commence running from the Stirling station of the Scottish Central Railway. So Archibald Campbell and the Scottish Central Railway are actually working in cooperation. The railway delivers the tourists, and Campbell takes them to all these lovely sites in the Trosachs. This is the type of coach that Campbell would have run. This photograph's taken outside the Dreadnought Hotel. It's not one of Campbell's coaches because his name does not appear on the side of the coach there. There is a license plate at the beginning, which I can't actually quite make out in the photograph. But this very posed photograph is intended to show you the kind of comfortable coach you will travel in if you're making the journey to the Dreadnought Hotel in Callander. You can see Dreadnought Hotel on the lintel just behind the bearded chap's face. This was the Royal Hotel in Stirling at the time. This particular photograph dates is no earlier than 1874. The reason I can say that is because the tram lines are down in front of it. But Archibald Campbell himself is in this picture. He's the second person from the right. He's wearing a top hat and standing with his staff outside the Royal Hotel. Everyone watching will recognise this building. It's on the corner of Friar Street and Barnton Street. Mr. Campbell sold it on in the 1890s. In 1904, it was sold to the Stirling Cooperative Society, and some older members of the audience this afternoon may even remember it having been the co-op. But that was certainly it in the days when it was the Royal Hotel. Another hotelier, Duncan Campbell, in the Golden Lion, is also taking advantage of passengers who by this time, by 1853, are arriving on the railway. And he says here, he respectfully intimates that many improvements have recently been effected in the interior arrangement and management of the house, rendering it complete in every department as a temporary residence for families, tourists and the public generally. Duncan Campbell flatters himself that those patronising his establishment will find it everything they could wish in respect of accommodation, moderation in charges and facility in obtaining necessary refreshments. Everything which experience could suggest has been done to provide for commercial gentlemen who will find it to their advantage to put up at the Golden Lion. We'll be hearing more about these commercial gentlemen later, but for the moment I'll just observe that the commercial gentlemen were the people that sustained the hotel through the winter, because it was trade that was 12 months of the year, not just the summer tourist trade. They have a coaching department offering coaches out to all these exciting sites out in the countryside, and the advert states that the inn is in the immediate vicinity of the Stirling station of the Scottish Central Railway, and if you had any doubt about whether you were going to be staying in the most comfortable of accommodation, you are assured that there are hot, cold and shower baths. So what Duncan Campbell is telling his prospective customers is, come to the Golden Lion and you are certainly not going to be roughing it. Also May 1853, James Grant's advertising again. Again, he's concerned about competition, but it's not this time competition from the Scottish Central Railway. You'll see on the left-hand side that his omnibus provision between Stirling and Bridge of Allen has greatly increased. It's now quite a frequent, hourly service in each direction. And he's now running a coach to Rumbling Bridge and through various other towns and villages. And he's operating now from the railway and commercial hotel at the foot of King Street. But as I said, it's a different kind of competition that James Grant now has in mind. James Grant would respectfully solicit the attention of the public to the unseemly opposition which is being carried on against him. He hopes it will be borne in mind that no fewer than 3 innkeepers are combining against one individual for the purpose of running him off the road. James Grant, unfortunately, has been too successful. He's shown that you can make money at this game, and as a result, others have come in, other innkeepers have come in. They're running coaches and omnibuses and competing with Grant, and James Grant is not happy at all. And in fact, I would hope that that wasn't what had a bad effect on his health, because sadly, not 3 months after this, on the 30th of August 1853, James Grant passed away. So time, unfortunately, at this time was running out for him. He had not been in good health when he came initially to Bridge of Allen. He was 45 years old when he died, and the cause of death is given in the old parish register, and the cause of death was dropsy. This was a heart-related condition. Any medical people watching this afternoon would be able to tell you exactly what it is. Basically, it was an accumulation of fluid in various parts of the body due to weakness of heart, and not a great deal could be done for it at that time. But poor old James Grant quit the scene in August of that year. Archibald Campbell, of course, of the Royal Hotel, carried on. In 1856, we can see him here advertising. The Royal Sovereign coaches are running through Bridge of Allen, Doon and Callander to the Trossachs and Loch Katrine, starting from Stirling Railway Station. So again, he's operating in good cooperation with the Scottish Central. 2 years later, 1858, another advert from Archibald Campbell advertising his service. But note the wording here. Passengers going by the above coach will arrive at Loch Katrine as soon as those travelling by the railway, without the necessity of change of luggage during the whole journey. This was published in the Stirling Observer on the 1st of July 1858. That date is significant because it was the opening day of the Dunblane, Doon and Callander Railway, which meant that you could now make the journey to Callander by rail. However, if you did so, you would arrive at the Stirling station, you would get off, your luggage would be got off, you and your luggage would then find yourself on the train going to Callander, you would go on the train to Callander, you would get off at Callander, once again you and your luggage are coming off to be loaded onto a coach to take you to the Trossachs and Loch Katrine. Now, Campbell is saying, get off at Stirling, take my coach, you'll only have to change once, you and your luggage. How do we think the railway companies might have reacted to this? Well, in August 1858, an agent of the Scottish Central Railway called upon Mr. Campbell at his hotel and told him that his coach would no longer be welcome at Stirling Station, at least not to collect passengers. He could deposit passengers, but he could certainly not collect them. What do we think the Stirling Observer may have said about this? Abominable railway tyranny. Tuesday last and yesterday witnessed in our town a most contemptible and savage piece of tyranny on the part of the railway officials. Mr. Archibald Campbell of the Royal Hotel here, the subject of unceasing persecution on the part of the directors of the Scottish Central Railway, etc. That the railway is wrong in the present, as in all former cases, is clear. Campbell and the Scottish Central came to an amicable arrangement in the end. And after this, things settled down. The anti-railway invective in the Stirling Observer ceases, and there is an increasing awareness of the amount of new business that the railway is in fact bringing into the town. As for the Scottish Central, it carried on until 1865, when it was absorbed by the Caledonian Railway. And this is the state of the rail network in this area at the time that happened. We can see that in the meantime, the Stirling and Dunfermline Railway had arrived in Stirling in 1852. The Forth and Clyde Junction Railway, which ran to Balloch, had arrived in 1856. The Dunblane, Doon and Callander, of course, arrived in 1858. And the Scottish Central had built several branch lines and had also taken out the lease of the Dundee and Newtile Railway. So 1865, the Scottish Central then becomes a subsidiary of the Caledonian Railway. Horse buses carried on. Here we see the Stirling, St Ninians and Bannockburn omnibus outside the lodge at Langgarth, and there's Melville Terrace in the foreground, round about 1905, 1908, so 60 years after the railway. But the last vestige of the Scottish Central Railway in Stirling is not to be found at Stirling Railway Station, for it was completely rebuilt by the Caledonian Railway in 1913. The last vestige of the Scottish Central Railway, as some of you will be aware, is to be found in the garden of a house in Torbrex, where we find the Scottish Central Railway lamppost. And if you frequent the Torbrex Inn, you will no doubt have seen this for yourself, just 2 minutes away from the entrance to the Torbrex Inn. I don't know how the person here would have acquired that lamppost. It's in very, very good condition, complete to the name of the railway on it. But we may ask ourselves, why was the Stirling Observer expressing such hostility to the Scottish Central Railway? Reading the Stirling Observer at the time, it's very clear that it was the voice of the local business community. The owner and editor in this period was Ebenezer Johnson. A lot of the opinions expressed in the Observer are not just about the Scottish Central Railway. He made some rather unkind comments about the competing Stirling Journal and Advertiser. But generally speaking, it's the voice of the local business community. And in James Grant's obituary in 1853, there's a very interesting statement, because the obituary starts, "We cannot allow this man, though comparatively a stranger among us, to go down to the grave without word of sympathy." Comparatively a stranger among us. Who, may we ask, are us? I believe that is the Stirling business community, because it's fairly clear that at that time, the commercial community consisted of family businesses accustomed to supplying and dealing with each other, both professionally and socially. Certainly, if you were in the upper ranges of the business community, you'd be a member of the Guildry. You would invite other business people round to your house for dinner, over which you would discuss business. and your friends would be people with whom you had business dealings, and there would be numerous small firms buying and selling to each other. The Scottish Central Railway, with its headquarters in Perth, was seen very much as an outsider. It was a Perth-orientated business. The directors were predominantly large Perthshire, wealthy Perthshire landowners. In property maintenance, for example, if any work was needed at the Stirling railway station, a railway tradesman would be sent down from Perth to do it. The business wouldn't go to the local Stirling people, Stirling business people. And the railway employees, even the managers, would be regarded by the business owners as company servants, not members of the business owning class. What that meant was if you wanted to consign your goods to go by rail, instead of doing a nice deal with someone that you knew and had known for years, you went along to the Stirling station of the Scottish Central Railway, where you were confronted by someone that you regarded as a jumped up clerk with a book of railway rates, who told you what you were going to pay to send your goods by rail. Not the kind of person you would invite round to your home. On top of which, the railway is not just bringing tourists, it's bringing new competition. Do you remember the commercial gentlemen at the Golden Lion? A substantial number of these would be commercial travellers selling low-cost, mass manufactured goods coming in by rail. Up until this time, we had local suppliers producing most of the requirements of the local market. Now commercial travellers are coming in with a nice book showing you what you can buy for a fraction of the price you can get locally, delivered from stock by a manufacturer in Glasgow, Manchester, London, wherever. So competition as well. But in the longer term, businesses react. The railway brings in a lot of new customers for the retail and hospitality industries. Tourists, people coming in, perhaps setting up new businesses, and general expansion. The old manufacturers who knew each other may have seen the commercial travellers as unfair competition, but the access to low-cost mass manufactured goods starts off a retail revolution in Stirling. From this period onwards, many new retail businesses are established, particularly, it has to be said, from the 1890s onwards, when many more consumer goods became available. But really from the advent of the railway, a lot of new retail businesses are established. The town centre flourishes, it moves down the hill. The old Episcopal church is sold off to property developers and in the 1870s, and a whole new retail area grows up. And I would suggest that the advent of the railway brings changes to 19th century business in Stirling, possibly as great as the advent of the internet in the present day, with further change likely, of course, in the aftermath of the current lockdown. But to me, the arrival of the railway in 1848 and the arrival of the internet in the late 20th and early 21st centuries were both examples of what's called disruptive technology, a kind of new technology which doesn't just help you do what you do now more efficiently, but brings wholesale change to economy and society, which, if you are a business, you are going to have to move pretty quickly and pretty astutely to adapt, to make the necessary adaptation. But just as the Stirling businesses of the 19th century showed themselves able to adapt and establish new businesses, today we are seeing the same processes of adaptation and innovation. And with that thought, I'll leave you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, David. I really enjoyed that. If I can ask everybody to put their hands together to give David a round of applause for a very entertaining talk. So, very much. Excellent. So, as always, open it up for questions. I don't know, David, would you be okay with stop sharing the screen, and that way we can see people in the chat if they do have questions? You can ask by either just unmuting yourself or typing it into the chat or raising your hand.
Share there, and I'll go to gallery view.
So I don't know. I'll maybe start off there the questions there, David. So what I got a sense that there was a lot of hostility that was coming from James Grant and the stagecoach, but the railway maybe weren't so retaliative at the beginning. Was that just a frustration and a fed up over time, and then started picking into it?
I think the simple explanation for it is that the railway really weren't all that interested in Stirling, and I think that comes through in the Stirling Observer's approach, and the fact that they didn't really, I don't think, see James Grant or the other coach operators really as much in the way of opposition. They had bigger fish to fry. Also, the Scottish Central had a somewhat turbulent history of its own. There were a great number of boardroom battles between different factions. 5 hour long, the Perth Journal actually, the Perthshire Journal is actually a better source for this. 5 hour long board meetings, acrimonious board meetings with different factions wanting different alliances with different railway companies and pursuing different interests. It really had quite a tempestuous 20-year life of its own. And I think Stirling was frankly slightly somewhat off the radar.
Are there any other questions around the room? I don't know. Well, I'm from Leaven, so I don't know if you maybe have heard of the Leavenmouth Railway campaign to reinstall the Fortin to Leaven line.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, what's your thoughts? And this is a time where we should be investing in railways and maybe a part of this levelling up agenda kind of thing, or is railway, you think, had its time?
No, I think it is a time. It is a time to invest in railways. What we have to be very, very careful about, however, is that railways can eat money, particularly when the construction costs are phenomenal. We have seen some great successes. The first great success in modern times really was the reopening of the Bathgate line, which was subsequently extended right through to Airdrie, filling in the gap between Glasgow and Edinburgh. The Alloa line has been tremendously successful. The Borders Railway, in fact, we've got somebody from Hoyt in the audience this afternoon. The Borders Railway has been a great success as well. But it does mean that you have to do your groundwork beforehand. A problem with railways is that people can become very, very enthusiastic. They can become very rose-tinted about them. You'll get railway enthusiasts making all sorts of extravagant claims for benefits that can be made by opening up just about everything. So really it's a matter of doing all the groundwork first and assume that the initial estimates, the railway will not be built for whatever the initial estimate is. But I think the sheer numbers that the railway is carrying now shows that there is now a market for railways once more. It's just a matter of being very, very careful about choosing the right projects.
Yeah, because I know you've got the H1 line, the big the high-speed railway line between London and the north is getting a lot of heat there for overrunning on costs and things.
Yes. Right, that's fine. Somebody's just sent a chat there as well. Yep. I missed the beginning when you were talking about research and the trust. If you possibly send me details, yes, I certainly can. And that's come to me privately, yes. So yes, I certainly will. In fact, I've got a whole talk on transport and the trust, which is coming up in this series. So that will be an opportunity then. But if there's no further points, I thought there might have been one or two wee points, but you know what people felt were perhaps the reasons for the hostility shown, because It doesn't come through in Perth, for example. It does come through in one or two places, particularly when there's a feeling that the railway has a monopoly. I have to say to Stuart and Hoyk that down in Hoyk and Galashiels and everything, there's a certain amount of resentment against the North British Railway, but by local traders who feel that they're being fleeced by the railway company in the early days. So there is a little bit of that in the borders as well, but it's certainly not reflected in the Perthshire Journal. It's not really reflected in the other two papers either, the Stirling Journal and Advertiser and the Stirling Sentinel, but the Observer took it on very much head on.
And sorry, from the, was it the Scottish Central Railway, the SCN, that financed and constructed all these new stations and things along the station?
Yes, and it was the Scottish Central built the stations. A number of them were rebuilt by the Caledonian. After the Caledonian came in, the Scottish Central, to keep the expenses down as much as they could, they put in quite a number of level crossings, and they had also built timber bridges rather than masonry bridges. The Caledonian replaced the two level crossings in Stirling. Kersh Road and Shore Road were both originally level crossings. They're now bridges. Well, the Caledonian built the bridges, but there is one photograph that I know of Shore Road as a level crossing. I don't know of anyone of Kersh Road as a level crossing, but I know it was. But the Caledonian replaced them with bridges, and the timber bridges all over the place. Timber bridges were bad news. So they were in this kind of climate anyway, and they were replaced by masonry bridges. Later on in the century, the Stirling Borough Council continually complains about the state of the station building at Stirling, and eventually the Caledonian rebuild in 1913. The Caledonian Railway rebuilds the whole thing with a beautiful station building that is there to this day.
Then was it always a nationalised service then, or private enterprise, I assume, back in the day?
It was private enterprise until 1948. It was nationalised in 1948 as British Railways.
Right.
In 1923, there were major groups of railway companies formed. The Caledonian, as successor to the Scottish Central, was part of the London, Midland and Scottish group, and the Stirling and Dunfermline Railway and the Forth and Clyde Junction Railway, which were both subsequently operated by the North British, then became part of the London and North Eastern. They were the two big groups that my wife Sheila's grandfather was actually station master. It was the LNER station master in Stirling for the North, well, just after 1923.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, certainly.
It's not George, by the way, it's June. Is there any suggestion that the editor or the owner had a financial interest in any of the stage companies, or was it just sort of general business pressure on them to?
The thing about the stagecoach operators, that they're all small businesses. They weren't big companies that published accounts and lists of directors and whatnot. So you're very much, local newspapers are often the best source of information about them. They don't leave the kind of written record that a railway company leaves, for example. I think Ebenezer Johnson certainly had quite a lot of local business interests, some of which he may have felt were being threatened by the railway. So yes, Johnson himself may have had a certain concern about his own local business dealings, but I certainly don't know of any actual evidence that would back that up.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that in the two periods that I talked about, 1850 and 1858, Johnson himself was the editor at that time. In between, he had an editor who had a rather checkered career, whose name I'm desperately trying to remember. But he did have an editor in between, but he took it over again himself after the editor was sacked. That's another story. The stories in, if you have Bob Hutchins' book, Stirling Observer 150 Years On. The story of Johnson and his editors is in there. It's really quite interesting.
So we've got a couple of comments in the chat there. One from Anne. It was thinking it's interesting to hear about the reasons behind the local business and the opinions on the dealings. And Sheila's about Henderson Outfit. Yes. The old established businesses in Stirling.
So yes, that's absolutely right. Henderson started. I looked up the start date of Henderson's, and I can't remember what it was now. Because Sheila had mentioned Henderson's to me as she thought was the oldest. It wasn't quite as far back as I thought, actually, but I cannot now remember what it was. If Sheila's there, she can remember. No. Oh, it is Sheila who put that there.
Oh, it was, yeah.
Henderson's in paper, right, yes.
Well, I don't know if I think, are there any other questions, just in case I've missed anybody there?
Here's somebody's remembering when I did this presentation at Lochard some years ago. Retirement's going very well. That message from James Kennedy. Yes, thanks very much. Thanks,
Hi, David, it's me here. Yes, delighted.
Yes,
looking well.
Yes, retirement's going very well.
Good. And we'll invite you out another time. Maybe do you run on the Trossachs. I'll try and catch it on Zoom. But it's great to see you looking so well.
Yes, very good. You'll remember, of course, when I gave the talk at Lochard, I was a beardless youth.
Indeed. I've noticed. Is that a consequence of retirement or Zoom or lockdown?
It's a consequence of lockdown.
Oh, well, it suits you.
Yes. I thought, I used to get up in the morning, and then I would, after I'd been up during the day, I thought, no, I'm sure there was something I meant to do this morning. And then, and then I just let it grow.
Well, it suits you, David. It really does.
Thanks very much.
As ever. Well, I'm retired as well. But you take care. I'll see you around Stirling, hopefully, anyway, and you'll come out and see us.
Oh yes, absolutely. Good. Very good. Thanks very much.
Okay. Cheers, David.
Cheers.
So, I think if that is it, we'll probably leave it there. So I'd like to ask everybody once again to put your hands together and give David a fantastic round of applause.
Thank you very much.
We'll get this uploaded. It'll be on our YouTube channel if you want to share it among your friends and things. And then we'll be back next week with, I believe, Jim Roche is on D-Day, Dodger, if memory.
That'll be good.
Yes.
Lovely.
That'll be good.
Thanks again.
Well, great Wednesday, everyone.
Right. For organising it all, Ross.
Yes, indeed. Yes, thanks again, Ross. Excellent administration. Excellent organisation. I've thoroughly enjoyed all of these that I've seen.
Yeah, it's a real good platform, and I'm loving the variety of content that we're getting on it.
Yes.
Fantastic. It's really building up a nice holistic picture of Stirling.
Yes, very good. Right, thanks very much then. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.